All right, y'all. So what we're going to look at first are two graphs. We've already kind of have been working with graphs, so this should be an easy review of the two graphs. But I'm also going to start kind of showing you a relationship to what we're going to do to work with tables. So the first thing that we've talked about that is always the easiest to identify was our y-intercept. That is where it crosses my y-axis. This is my y-axis. So where my line crosses my y-axis. So I know my y-intercept. If I was to write an ordered pair for that, the ordered pair would be 0, 2. So I know my y-intercept is 2. Again, remember we use b to represent our y-intercept. To find our slope, when we find our slope, we've been working on rising up. So when I rise up, that is my change in y. Notice I'm moving along my y-axis over here. So I'm rising up 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. And then I'm running. So when I run, that is my change in x. And I'm running 1, 2, 3 spots. So I know my slope is 4/3. And remember, we represented slope with the letter m because we have to move on our graph to find our slope. So when we go to write our equation, we have the equation y equals mx plus b. Since I know my m is 4/3 and I know my b is 2, I can easily write the equation y equals 4/3 x plus 2. Our other graph, and also you can always check to know if your slope is positive or not, as if you're reading a book. We always read a book from left to right. So if I'm reading left and I'm going to the right, my graph is increasing, not decreasing. So I know that my slope is going to be positive. So if I go to look at my other graph over here, my ordered pair where I'm crossing my y-axis is down here. The ordered pair for that would be at 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0, -3. So I know my y-intercept is -3. Again, that is my b. My slope then, to find my slope, I'm going to have to find another point on my graph that I can use to count. So I'm going to pick this point right here. So again, to find my change in y, this time I'm having to go down. So because I'm having to go down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that is a -6. To find my change in x, I go to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can simplify my fraction by 2, and I would have a -3/2. My slope representing m would be a -3/2. When I go to write my equation this time, y equals mx plus b. This time it's a little bit different because I've got negatives involved, right? So I'm going to have y equals a -3/2x. And instead of putting plus a -3, remember how we talked about how algebra likes to be pretty? We're going to put a -3/2x minus 3. And then that's my final equation. So when we go to start looking at tables, we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing on our graphs. When I was finding my y-intercept was always when my x value was 0 and I had a y value. And we'll talk about that here in a second, but first we're going to find the slope from our tables. So just like we did on our graphs where we found our change in y, and then we found our change in x, we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to find my change in y over change in x. And you can see that here also. That is the same thing as change in y over change in x. That's why we use that little triangle. I know your teachers used that with you last year. Now, some of you don't like messing with negative numbers. You don't have to mess with negative numbers if you don't want to, because this should be a linear situation. So the rate of change is the same throughout the entire table. So you can pick any of the numbers to start out with. So I prefer to mess with positive numbers. So my change in y over here to go from 1 to 3 is 2. My change in x over here to go from 0 to 1 is 1. And I'm going to take that 1 and put it under the 2. So my change in y was 2, my change in x was 1, so I know my slope is going to be 2. So then I'm going to continue on over here. Again, I don't like messing with negatives. I have negatives over here. I don't want to mess with that. So again, I have my change in y over my change in x. This side is my change in y. This side is my change in x. So to go from 3 to 2.5, I'm not increasing this time, right? I'm decreasing. To go from 3 to 2.5, I had to take away something because I got smaller. So I had to subtract a 0.5. To go from 0 to 1, I increased by 1. So I'm going to take that guy over here, and it goes right underneath there. So my change in y was a negative 0.5 over 1. You notice how it kind of makes like a smiley face? That's kind of cute, right? So slope should always make you happy, obviously. So I end up having a slope of a negative 0.5. So if I look at this next one, I go from 8 to 14, I increase by 6. 3 to 5, I increase by 2. So again, change in y, change in x. I want change in y over change in x. I know I bring this guy over here underneath. So I end up with 6 over 2. Now, if I have 6 over 2, and I type that in my calculator, 6 over 2 and alpha y equals, it gives me a positive 3. So I know my slope would be a positive 3. So let's flip it over and let's look at some of these other examples. So now I need to find my y-intercept. So just like before, let's review and go back. When I had a graph, we always said my y-intercept was super easy to identify because it was where it crossed the y-axis. And when it crosses the y-axis, I have a 0 for my x value and a value for my y. So when I'm looking at my graph here, or my table, my y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So when I'm scanning down here, oh, I found when x is equal to 0, so I know my y-intercept is 1. I'm scanning, oh, this is when my x is equal to 0, so I know my y-intercept is 3. They will try and trick you up by putting a 0 over here in the y column. So you always have to make sure it is when your x is equal to 0. So I'm checking down, oh, here's where my x is equal to 0, so I know my y-intercept is negative 1. Now there's the instances sometimes where you don't have a 0. So notice on here, I don't have a 0 for my x value. So I can't just look at my table and know my y-intercept because I don't have a thing to do. I don't have a thing to use for that. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. This table is super nice, moving by ones going down, right? So I could work my way up to 0. That's one way I could do it. So I could easily just work my way up. This is 0. I know each one of these was changing by 1. Each one of these was changing by 4. So if I work my way up by 4, I know that it would be 7. But sometimes they don't give me these pretty little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x values. It's kind of all over the place. So we have to figure out the other way to do it. So the other way to do it is to first find your slope. So my change in y, my change in x. So I know I'm going to bring that 1 underneath this 4 over here. So I have 4 over 1, which equals 4. Then I'm going to fill my slope into my equation. So I know my slope is m. So over here in my equation where m is at, I'm just going to put a 4. Then I'm going to choose an ordered pair to use my equation of y equals 4x plus b. So I'm going to choose the ordered pair 1, 11. So I have the ordered pair 1, 11. We know that the 1 is my x value and the 11 is my y value. So just kind of like we were doing with with direct variation, I'm going to plug those numbers into my equation. So y is 11. So I'm going to put 11 in here. I'm going to put my 1 in for my x, and now I'm basically solving for b. 4 times 1 is 4 plus b. To get b by itself, because I'm doing 4 plus b, I have to do the inverse of adding 4. So I'd have to subtract 4, and so I get 7 is equal to b. So now I know my y-intercept is 7. So m was equal to 4, b is equal to 7. So now I can have my equation of y equals 4x plus 7. So my first thing is always, again, I'm going to see if they give me my y-intercept, because just like on a graph, it is the easiest thing to scan for, looking for a 0. I was given a 0 right here, so I know that my y-intercept is a -4. To find my slope, and look, this 0, that could confuse some of you. Remember, it is always when my x is equal to 0. So the next thing is, I don't like these negatives up here, right? So I'm going to go down here and use this to find my change in y over my change in x. 0 to 2 is 2. 2 to 3 is 1. I'm going to put that underneath there. So I get 2 over 1, or 2. So I end up with the equation of y equals 2x. And it says plus a -4. But remember, algebra likes to be pretty. So I'm going to end up with the equation y equals 2x minus 4. So for this next paper that you're going to work on, you may want to get out some notebook paper, because, and I'm going to work a couple of them out with you, so that you can see some more examples of how to find the y-intercept when it's not given to you. So I'm going to skip number 1, because you should be able to easily find the y-intercept in the slope on that one. So I'm going to look at number 2 with you. So on each one of these, on every single one of these, you're going to find the slope, the y-intercept, and the equation. I know I didn't write that on every single problem, but I'm telling you right now that's what you're going to do. So up here, I'm going to I'm scanning this and I don't see a 0 here, right? So darn it, I'm going to have to find my slope first. So to go from 10 to 4, I know I am subtracting 6. So my change in y, my change in x. To go from -2 to -4, I know I am subtracting 2. This is where your calculator is going to help you so you don't mess up on your integers. So you need to make sure that you are aware. If I'm going from 10 to 4, I'm not adding 6. I have a difference of 6, and I'm subtracting to get smaller. So if I have my change, so I'm going to bring this guy over here, and I get a -2, or a -6 over -2. So change in y over change in x. I have a -6 over -2, and that simplifies down to a +3. So I know right now that my m is equal to a +3. So I'm going to start filling in my equation of y equals mx plus b. So I have y is equal to 3x plus b. I'm going to use the ordered pair -2, 10. So -2, 10. I know this is x and this is y. So I'm going to substitute those values in. So 10 is equal to 3 times the -2 plus b. 3 times the -2 is -6 plus b. And I'm solving for b. This is what I want to get by itself. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So to get b by itself, I am adding, I have this -6 here, right? I've got to get rid of it. So the only way to get rid of it is by adding 6, just like we have been solving equations before. Things aren't, again, like I've told you, math builds on each other. So this is the same thing as solving a simple one-step 6th grade equation. So 10 plus 6 is 16. That equals b. So m is equal to 3. So over here where I have m is equal to 3, b is equal to 16. So to have my equation, I'm going to have y is equal to 3x plus 16. So the next thing, let's look at number 3 here. Again, I'm going to scan. I don't have a 0. So I'm going to have to find my slope first. So change in y over change in x. To go from 1 to 4, I'm adding 3. To go from 5 to 7, I am adding 2. So I'm bring this guy underneath here. So I have 3 over 2. So change in y over change in x is 3 over 2. So again, I have a slope. So this is number 3. I have a slope of 3 over 2. I'm going to pick the ordered pair 5, 1. This is x, y. So if I have the equation y equals mx plus b, I have 1 is equal to 3 over 2 times 5 plus b. So in your calculator, which I don't have. Okay. Well, in your calculator, you are going to do alpha y equals and do 3 over 2 times 5. And that is going to give you 1 is equal to 15 over 2 plus b. Again, I'm got to get rid of this positive 15 over 2, so I'm going to subtract 15 over 2, subtract 15 over 2. And that leaves me with a negative 13 over 2 is equal to b, or a negative 6.5 is my b. So I know my m is 3 over 2. My b is, I'm going to say a negative 6.5 to make things easier. So I'm going to have y is equal to 3 over 2x minus 6.5. One of the problems I do not, so you need to mark out number 7. You are not going to do number 7. That is a problem that you're not going to have to see. These other ones look okay. So on every single one of these, you are going to find the slope and y-intercept. You are more than welcome to go back and re-watch parts of the video. That is why I made the video, because it is easier for you to go back and re-watch if you have a question about something. It's going to stay available to you on Schoology, so if you have a question on homework or something like that, you can always go back and re-watch parts of the video. So there's no reason for you to just be absolutely confused, because you have a resource to go back and revisit. If you have any questions, let me know, but you need to get started on this and yeah, work hard. Okay, talk to y'all. Well, I'm in class, so if you need help or whatever, but I'm not in class right now, but I will be when you're watching this. Okay, anyways, whatever. Bye.